Agreed. Yeah, because right, if you're looking back on the way that you used to do things, and if there's a potential for you to improve, and you're going, well, no, this is the way I've always done them, so let me just keep doing it. Well, then, yeah, you're intentionally like halting yourself. I think about, so let's just talk shop for a minute, right? Let's talk photography because why not? I think about film photographers. Film photographers like in the 90s. In the 90s, if you were a working commercial photographer, you shot on film, right? And that is what you did. Like stock photography, for example, was rampant. It was everywhere. Like stock photography, you could make a solid like 6-figure living off of stock photography. That's another part of change. But you shot film, and then digital came along, right? Early 2000s, mid 2000s. It's not going anywhere. Late 2000s. It's here. It's hanging out. It's getting better, and we are where we are today. And then people will still say, well, film's still better. And it's like, well, define better. Like, what makes it better? There was a change in the industry, and you either adapted or you didn't. You either pivoted, right? That's the other word that I've been using during, this whole mess of time is pivot. You have to adjust. So change is good. YouTube stream is good. Yeah, thank you guys for checking. Cool. All right, so this worked. Fantastic. We'll see how long it lasts. I have another screen over here where I'm just like reading everything, so if I'm distracted, that's why. I can see like 5 versions of myself, and I don't think I like it.
Monitors you so.
Well, I just have 2 monitors, but one of them is showing like the live stream from the YouTube, it's showing from the Zoom, it's showing from my camera software, and from Facebook. So there's 5 me's.
I did not say that before.
Yep. Yes. So, yeah, I think that change is one of those things that, so what was it? I said it a while ago, and the quote is, change is the only constant, right? And when you think about that, it's a deep thought, like it really is, right? Because it's powerful. I don't know. It's powerful. Like if you think about if you are in the mindset to believe of the Big Bang Theory and anything like that, just the way that the world and the universe and everything was created, right? Change. Everything was changing, constantly changing. And that to me is like change is the only constant. When I think of that, I think about the universe. So I'm getting weird right now, Mo. But
Nope.
that's what I connect to. So then, oh boy, that was loud. So then what I immediately start thinking about is just big stuff, right? But it doesn't always have to be big stuff. Change can be something really small, like me allowing permissions on my computer so that OBS can stream a Zoom window. Oh, thanks, Jay. Sorry, distractions. Jay said he's digging the hair. Jay, I decided to kind of grow it out. I can almost pull it back. It's almost there. We're getting there, we're getting there. I think maybe by the winter or the fall we'll be able to pull it back. But change can be really small, or it can be really big, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about, the part of why I wanted to have you on, right? Because just in our time working together, when we met, which was what, maybe, what was that, 2 years ago? Not even? Not even. It was almost a year ago in the winter, right? Because that's when we did our first shoot together, I think it was.
The first shoot was a cheese.
Right. That was right in Orange. We did that, and it was cold out. I remember it was cold out because I remember the heat didn't work.
Mm-hmm. I still think about that house. I'm so scared.
Oh, you're thinking about the house. See,
One. There was many.
That's right. We did several houses. The first one we did was cheese, but it was in that kitchen. Do you remember that?
The first one was in that commercial kitchen.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I think it was on, maybe the heat did work that day, but it was another time that we were in there and the heat didn't work.
That must have been a different day because I don't remember.
Maybe it was. Anyway, so from when we first met and worked together, and me just learning about you and your story, right? Your past, specifically as a creative, I've learned about all of the change that you've done. And then again, in this short year, I've seen your change in such a, and again, I want to connect that with progress, right? Or growth, call it, right? I've seen so much change in what you've done. But talk to me a little bit about where you kind of started as an artist, if you wouldn't mind. Like what's one of the earliest memories that you can have, even as like a little kid, where like you were like, ooh, art is cool.
I can't, like, I think before I could even talk, really. I would always be drawing on the walls, apparently, and my mom would always have to be like painting over it.
Ah. Well, at least you have memories of that and not her screaming at you.
That's true. My stepfather, so this is when he met my mother. I know that she wanted to be able to sell the house that she was in, and like she was embarrassed because I was like drawing all over everything.
Sure.
But like that is the earliest thing, and then throughout my life I've always drawn, painted. Before anything, I've done commissioned artwork, like portraits and what's the word? Not contemporary, but just.
Like fine art.
Well, I've done that too. I don't know. The word's not coming to me right now.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I've always done that because.
When was the first time you started like charging for work, for paintings or for illustrations? Like, were you a teenager or were you a little bit older than that?
I was maybe a little bit younger than a teenager.
Oh wow, that's freaking awesome! I didn't know that. So you were making money selling art as like a kid.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. My parents always told me, if you want something, you gotta save up for it. So I've always had the mindset, okay, I gotta make this work. I gotta do something. I have to. That's a
good life lesson.
Yeah, and so I'd be like, okay, like let's see what I can do. And if it wasn't like fine art, I'd be creating. Like I used to sell bracelets in school, little things, and then that also taught me like marketing because I'm like, hey, mother did something up. You should probably take care of her.
Right. And that's so funny. I didn't realize that, but that's awesome. And I mean, look, I can't say that I'm not surprised because do you still have your fine art Instagram up? Do you still have that? That's still active? What is that one?
It's just my last name, Sourinho.
Sourinho. So at Sourinho. So for anyone who is listening, currently now or later after this is recorded. So I'm still talking to you. If you're listening and you're watching this, go follow at Sourinho. Look at Mo's fine art work. I said that correctly. That's a proper sentence.
Way hidden down there.
and it's, I mean, you do incredible stuff. I mean, you just did some paintings not too long ago of waves, I believe it was. Or was that old work that you just reposted?
It was old work.
Okay, it was old work.
You can also find it on Facebook because you know, like the highlight images.
Yeah. Okay.
I just did a few of those because it's so far to me. Now that I'm in a new place, I haven't painted because I don't want to get over.
Right, the logistics of it all. But yeah. more of my point in saying that was that like your artwork is incredible. So to me, when I see you, right, I think of you. We were talking about this before, right? Is that I see you. You're a fine artist, right? And your medium has just kind of shifted over time, right? You went from making bracelets, right, or doing illustrations, commissioned illustrations as a kid, to doing paintings, to you even had a career as a tattoo artist, right? Tell me about that.
So, I guess we'll backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
The painting, okay, so I have family members who have gone to school for fine arts. And that was kind of a pressure that was put onto me, like, oh, you have to learn this, you have to do that, this is how you should do this is how you should do that. And looking back at it right now, it was a lot of pressure, and maybe it contributed to me not being happy with, like, painting and drawing, per se. And so I was looking at different things, and a lot of people suggested like, oh, you should become a tattoo artist, and I thought like, okay, why not? Like, it was something to do like right out of high school, and because I didn't have a strategic set path of knowing where I wanted to go and what I wanted to spend my money learning, I was like, I might as well just learn something that feels a little bit more interesting. I mean, I was still going to like school at the time, but it wasn't, it was just general.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, speaking of change, when I did tattooing, it was like people were more like that transition was a little bit smoother from other people's perspectives.
Ah.
So once I let go of anything involving painting or drawing, I had the pressure of other people not being able to change, where they were like, what are you doing? You're wasting what you can do.
You're wasting your talent.
Yeah.
How dare you? You were so good at tattooing. How dare you leave it because you're amazing at it? It's like, well, if you're not happy, like that's kind of the golden rule, right? Is and I try to preach this, that when I talk about my whole 70-30 thing, that whole 70-30 mindset, which arguably is only like a year old, and you were one of the starting members of that mentality, right? Is you should have fun doing what you're doing. Like on set when we're shooting, yeah, we're working, but let's make that 30%. Let's make 70% fun. Let's enjoy the process. And if you're living that 70-30, well then you're good. If you're reversed, even though you're tattooing and you're doing wonderfully, but you're not having fun, well then don't do it. Yeah, that's interesting. You're right, because it's not just our change, it's the change or acceptance, right, of others.
Yeah. It it was a huge one to learn and let go of.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that you even mentioned how you had pressure. So you almost had like the opposite pressure that most would encounter, right? Of someone saying like, well, you need to be an artist, right? Whereas most people would be like, don't be an artist, like that's a waste of your time, right? So it's interesting to hear that, although as you're saying that and as I'm saying it, I almost wonder, because art is such a huge part of my life, like maybe I might have that pressure put on my girls to some extent, and art is such a part of my wife's life, so that it's like art is a part of where she and I connect so deeply. And when I see Scarlett, my oldest, drawing with chalk and she's excited about it, I'm like, yes, this is amazing. Like I get so fueled by that. But at the same time, as you're sharing this with me, I'm realizing, well, I don't want her to be 18 one day and I'm like, you got to do something with art. And she's like, no, that's not what I want to do. That would bum me out, but I could understand why that pressure would be put on someone.
Yeah, but you're like supportive of what they do, whether it's art or not.
I would be, yeah. I'd like to think that I would be, because I have that mentality now.
Like my parents aren't artists or anything.
Ah, so it was just another source.
Yeah, both my parents are what are they called? Like they're tech people.
Okay, sure.
And then, well, okay, so that's my mom, my stepdad, and then my father. He was the one that actually was don't do art until like later on down the road, where it's like more of an opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
He saw it as that, if that makes sense. And then it was like all these different conflicting ways of how I should have been.
Right. Isn't that so fun when someone likes to give you a whole supposed tos? And that's like, here's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have this by 18. You're supposed to do this by 25. You're supposed to do this by... I hate all of that shit. I hate it so much. Just live it like I'm supposed to have bought a house by now. It's like, no, I'm not. Why? Because someone said so? Because you're supposed to follow some formula? No, get out of here. That's crazy. Or even when you think about... I think it was... some actors that like didn't actually make it big until they like were in their 40s, and it's like, yeah, and that's fine. And like some of the biggest stars, I can't think of his name, the guy who was in Star Wars,
I'm terrible.
Han Solo from Star Wars, anyway, and he I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, or I'm completely making that up. Either way, the sentiment is there that you know, everyone dropping a bunch of supposed on you isn't really going to help you. So you worked as a tattoo artist, and then talk to me about your introduction, because I know that you and I have already had this conversation, but let's talk about your transition or introduction or your change, right, to food and food styling, because that's how you and I originally connected. Well, I think it was Zach who sent me your information, because I was looking for a food stylist, and Zach said Mo's the go-to. I was like, all right. And I looked at your work and I was like, holy shit, her stuff's awesome. I shared it with the team of people here. They're like, holy shit, her stuff's awesome. And the client was stoked. And then, you know, match made in heaven. But talk to me about the transition of your background of all these art forms and how you connected that with food.
Okay, so I've always liked making food. My mom has always tried to get me out of the kitchen. She was like, yeah, like I'm in her way. So I think that naturally made me like more curious. And then after tattooing, there was a few jobs in me. Like, do I talk about that? Like,
yeah, well, it's funny because I'm just reading a comment now from Jay, and he says, I feel like as an artist, you find yourself good at many types of art, and I would agree with this, right? How do you know which one to land on? And that's a huge question, because what I found in many things is that a lot of artists, I find that they can kind of do a whole bunch of different types of art, and music as well. Mo, do you play any music? Are you a musician at all?
No.
I take it all back. It's a bunch of bullshit. But I have found that like just a lot of creative people, and I see that they're artists, or like I'll hear them tapping on their, and I'll say, do you play drums? They're like, yeah, I play a little drums. I'm like, I could tell, right? And so it's just interesting how there is so much crossover. So Jay, to your point, like how do you know which one to land on? I guess the simplest answer, right? The dad answer in me, try them all out. See which one makes you happiest. Like, explore them. And I'll say this, even just within my industry, in as I do photography, and I used to do graphic design at the time made me happy, but photography makes me way happier. Like, I'm way more happy now. Maybe it's because I'm also working for myself. But I digress. Mo, food. Yes, talk to me about, like, your mom's kicking you out of the kitchen, but you've always cooked and enjoyed food. Keep going.
Okay. I want to respond to that, but then, like, I have another tab open in my mind where it's, like, actually my stepdad.
Roll with them all. Roll with all the tabs. We can come back to it.
Cool. So my stepdad, he used to play in bands and stuff, and he had his collection of guitars and his microphones and stuff. So when I was a kid, I would actually, one of the first things I ever wanted to be was a singer.
Get out. Do you sing?
Not out loud to people.
Right. But in the shower, in the car, you're singing.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. I mean, I do a little bit, but I will be the first to admit, like, if you give me a note to hit, I'll hit it. But if you want me to transition to other notes after that, not so much. But that's, so, to me, a singer is a musician, but you just have a built-in instrument. That's the way I would think of that.
Yeah, I can't read music. Like, I took classes and stuff, but it just doesn't stick. I took guitar lessons, and I used to have an electric guitar. Could I play it? Nope, not at all.
But you had it.
I did. Okay, so going back to the other town. Yeah, my mom would be like, get out of the kitchen, you're in the way, blah, blah, blah. So I think naturally I would try and cook and bake whenever I could. I got a scar when I was younger, and I still have it from nearly setting the house on fire, making brownies with s'mores on top.
Sounds like a good idea.
Later on down the line, tattooed while going to school. Then there are a few other jobs in between, but some that stuck out or stood out was I used to hand model for vintage jewelry, but she took the photos and she was the one who wanted to introduce me to Photoshop to help her work.
Ah,
That's
interesting.
where I have my first laptop, which I still have not let go. Which is why the conversion of Windows to Mac is like a huge thing for me, because I invested in that laptop and I'm like, no, I need to like make the most of it.
Yep.
And after that, then I worked at Ben and Jerry's while going to school for pastries.
Mm.
Then while doing that, I got sidetracked. Was like, no, I'm gonna get into photography. So I combined food and photography, and here I am.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you hand modeling, because you feature yourself in a lot of your photos, and as
yeah, but it wasn't. All this stuff was just like, okay, hold your hand like this, and I was the first person she interviewed, and I got hired. So I don't think of myself as a hand model.
But you got
there at that time.
You got good hands, though, Mo. You got good hands. That's all you need, are just good hands. But what's interesting is because you know how to put your hand in a position so that it's pleasing to look at, versus like this. Like, people will do like claws, and I'm like, no, you need to like relax your hand. It needs to be like smooth and fluid. But you feature yourself in your own shots, like when you're doing a photo up high and like your hand is like way down low. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Which you know what? I'm thinking about it, and we should include that in the video project. That should be a part of behind the scenes.
Oh, the hand of me like struggling to. Well, I have a tripod now.
Right.
Or a stand that like goes above.
Right. Because now it's easier. But. Right, so that in itself, right? Someone connecting to you, you're going to school, you're learning pastries, and then you kind of transition into photography, right? Because that shouldn't be overlooked either. You're an incredible photographer. Your eye for composition and light and balance and color is just all there, and that's one of the cool things about being an artist, right? Is that, or at least a visual artist, is that once you learn that medium, it translates to so many others. Like, it's kind of all the same. Like, once you understand color's all the same, whether it's painting or it's photography or it's video or it's tattooing. Like, color is color, So
I think.
Go ahead.
Speaking of composition and everything and photography, that was another thing. One, like, the things that I struggled with the most through painting was composition. I was always told, you need to get better at your composition. And it wasn't until photography that like it started piecing together. I think it's because you have more immediate results to like review something.
Yeah.
And like just the back and forth. But I think I like taking photos, but I don't think I'm like crazy or anything spectacular. I just take the photo.
Right.
And backtracking with that, back in the years, people would be like, why do you take pictures of your food? I'm like, I don't know, I just like to do it. And maybe that's another thing that's fueling it right now. It's like, oh, you used to make fun of me for like enjoying taking photos of my food.
Right.
And then with that change, nowadays, people just are more patient with me. They're like, oh, you're not going to take a photo?
Right.
You're not going to do this? I'm like, wait, what's happening?
That's an interesting thing, right? Is thinking about that as a change, right? Everyone has a camera now. Everyone has a camera. So everyone decides, well, I want to take pictures of everything. Well, right, for people that you're going to hang out with, and it's like, well, I'm going to take a picture of my plate. Hold on, let me style it, let me turn it, let me find the right light. And people are like, just eat your food. It's like, no. This is art. I'm capturing this art. Like, it's something you enjoy. And that, there was a huge shift in just culture, right? Where everyone was doing that. Now, arguably, some of the photos that people take of their food, they don't need to be doing it. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just saying, if you're going to do it, study composition, study lighting, right? Like, there are things behind it. And those that start doing that, and you see them, right? You see that's like, oh, you're starting to figure it out. Like, you're starting to know light. You're starting to, okay, keep going, right? So I would never tell someone, even though I just did, I wouldn't say it to their face per se, but no, I would always want to encourage someone who would want to take pictures. That's a whole other thing, right? Is this was scary to so many people and so many photographers and even designers. I had conversations about how it's like, it's so easy to make content now. Like, aren't you afraid? It's like, no. Or anyone can take a really good picture with their phone. Like, aren't you afraid of your, losing your livelihood? No, not at all. Because I recognize what people are doing with that. I need to adapt and I need to understand, okay, well, what is it that they're using their phone for? And content creators, right? I put that in quotes because that can sometimes be like a taboo term, but I'm a content creator. You're a content creator. If anyone is a creative that produces, I mean, it's kind of like,
do, but like it's not how it wants to be labeled.
Right. It's like when someone calls themselves like a YouTuber. It's like some people are like, don't say that. It's like, call me an entertainer, or like call me a comedian. Like, don't call me a YouTuber. But that's like a thing now, and that's how people connect. So I think about that, and yeah, I'm not going to be scared by that. I just need to know what's happening with the device so that way I can pivot and adapt and change to do what I need to do to make sure that I'm still valuable, right? So yeah, being able to take pictures all the time, to me, is a good thing, because now more people are inspired with photography. And as you described, right, when you're doing photography, that helps your painting. Photography helped my understanding of drawing. So my background as a kid was, just illustration. And it helped me, what it did was, my passion for photography helped me understand light. And then in understanding light, I knew how to better render direction of light, how hard or soft light needed to be. When I was a kid, I had no concept of hard light versus soft light. I had no idea. I would just look at someone else's drawing and I would draw it and I'd be like, oh, the shadows go here because that's what they did. But now it's like, well, I know how shadows work. Like, I know how highlights work. I know if the light is specular or if it's diffuse, like all of that shit. So it helped me with my illustration. Not that I draw that often, but it's cool how that's all connected.
Yeah, and like you're saying, with the different mediums, it just rolls into each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So within your photography, right, you're photographing your food. So let's circle back to talking about your food and see, because already you've done so much.
Wait, what are we talking about? The beginning of like Zach.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we were talking about, so I just wanted to share that, right, because Zach introduced us, and when I saw your work, I was like, oh, she's talented, like, we need her on set. And then what I realized was, when I was looking at your Instagram feed, was that those were your photos. So, and I remember when I messaged you and found that out, I was like, oh, she's good. Because not only are you styling your food, but you're photographing your food. So that, to me, is, so arguably, I would put myself at a kind of, like, as a photographer, right, in that sense, when I'm presenting myself to a client, right, you arguably have more value in the sense that I can give you the product, you can set it up, and you can photograph it, and you can deliver it. Now, it's not to say one's better or worse, but from a client's perspective, right, they might say, oh, well, why wouldn't I just go to her? Versus for me, we were literally having this conversation this morning, right, where I was talking with a new client, a new prospect, and they said, you could style food. And I was like, I can, but I've got someone. Like, that's my go-to.
If you have two subjects that excel in one certain thing and you combine them, it'll be better than one person trying to make up in that other department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, just in us meeting and connecting and working together. And now so another change for you, like, again, I'm just talking about the progress that I've seen from you. Another change, and a term that people probably don't like as much, is you're working now as a influencer. I don't want to say it like this thing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mo. I'm sorry. But like,
no, it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing, right? And it's not a bad thing. And again, this is change, right? Is that's a profession. Being an influencer is a profession, and it's kind of always been a profession if you think about it. Like, like celebrities or spokespeople. Like, there's always been influencers, right? Like, you're a marketer, or you're like I'm trying to think of someone like, I'm thinking of more like motivational speakers, like a Tony Robbins. That person's an influencer, so they can influence people to either change their lives or maybe to purchase something. So I would be inclined, if I am, a big major corporation, to say, hey, we want Tony Robbins representing our brand because people are going to buy more stuff because he's there. Or actors, right? There's a reason why Matthew McConaughey is in Lincoln commercials, because people are like, damn, that Matthew McConaughey, he's a cool guy. He's driving a Lincoln. Oh, I need a Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, spokesperson or brand ambassador, it sounds different than the word influencer, because influencer has influence, and it's like that psychology of knowing that somebody's trying to persuade you any type of way. I think that's what gets me anyways.
You're right. There is a terminology difference. You're right. Brand ambassador sounds different than influencer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because influencer can be, you can influence someone to do some shitty things, as we are well aware of, right? But a brand ambassador, yeah, I kind of like that better. I like that a lot better. But it is a term that people are now just sort of accustomed to, and you have to try to read between those lines. Same thing as content creator, right? Read in between the lines of what it is that you actually do. And I think we might have had this conversation, but I've been trying to call myself a creative problem solver, but that's like a lengthy, that's like a lot to say. Or I've been trying to say CPS, but that's also kind of like weird, because then people are like, what's CPS? I'm a creative problem solver. But it's the label that you can kind of connect with. And it was difficult for me, even when I started in photography, to start calling myself a photographer, because it took me a while to have the confidence to say, I'm a photographer. Versus like, oh yeah, I take pictures. I like to take pictures. When I was very much part-time and I did it on the weekends. But now it is sometimes just easier to say I'm a photographer versus, well, I can do more than that. I can produce the job. I can do the post-processing. I'm a retoucher. I'm also all of these other things. I can shoot video. I can edit video. Like, I can do all this stuff. But just saying to someone like photographer, it's simple. But I would love to be able to say creative problem solver, because that's what I am. That's what you are too, right? You're a creative problem solver. That's what we do as artists. At least when you're paid, is I have a problem. Whether it's I have an empty hole on my wall and I need you to put a painting there, or I have this product and I need you to make it look amazing. You got to figure that out.
Absolutely. And another tab opened. You were speaking.
Open them up.
It's the change of how people perceive all these different titles.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, photographers were like, wow, you do that, and nowadays it can be seen like, oh, isn't everybody a photographer? And then it makes you think, well, if there are a lot of people in this one industry, how can we change the way that we market ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Or just the way that we talk about it, and it just opens up so much. And I don't know.
It's sorry, I'm reading a comment and I can't quite understand it. I'm just gonna say yes.
I think you can see more comments than I can. I'm not actually like.
You might have to refresh it. You might have to like leave and then pop back in, because sometimes it gets like stuck. At least I found that. But it's you're right. It's that perception, and that's one of the things that I enjoyed when I started doing the Tuesday Tips live in person. And one of the things that I wanted to do was, and maybe I still can do it virtually, but I don't know that there would be as much interest, but the ability to have smaller groups of people to meet, those that are really passionate, right? That to say, hey, because the whole idea of Tuesday Tips Live, right, was community over competition. If I can inspire the community to be better, or to embrace one another over, the competition, because you're right, you just said it a while ago, that people say everyone's a photographer. Well, yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And when I was starting out, I had an experience where there was an experienced photographer that kind of looked down on me when I told them, like, yeah, I'm doing photography. And it's immediately I was hit with the idea, and I've shared the story a bunch, so I won't dive into it, but I immediately was hit with just negativity. So I was like, I don't want to be that way. So let's bring the community together. Let's rise the whole community up. And I wanted to do it in smaller groups, but I think it can still be done in a larger group, where people, not to say that everyone needs to be on the same page. They don't, because everyone's approach is going to be slightly different, and that's what makes people unique. And that, to me, is what is going to differentiate you from a client, right? So someone might say, hey, I want technical proficiency in the execution of these photos. Or someone might say, I want it to be fully organic and I want it to just be wild and free. And at the end of the day, you're still a photographer, but those are two very different approaches to providing similar results. So it doesn't mean one's better or worse, but it is, right, having this understanding that photography has value, and your creativity has value, your time has value. I mean, these are things that you and I talk about often, right? Where it's you need to make sure.
Photography, it just applies to every single medium, any career, anybody trying to go after something that means something to them.
Yeah.
I think.
And right, if you follow, whether you're a mechanic or whatever it might be, but a mechanic, a plumber, an electrician, those are all trades that people sort of accept to be like, oh, well, these are, or even like a therapist, right? If you're a therapist, people are like, oh, I know I'm probably gonna be paying $150 an hour. But if I'm like, yeah, I take pictures, you got to pay me $150 an hour. They're like, yeah, right, I could do that. It's like, well,
And
could you?
somebody said you got. Jay said you have a little bit of an echo.
Oh, thank you, Jay. I will try to modify. Let me know if that's still bad. Yeah, so I think it's one of those things that, not that everyone has to have an agreement on what is a photographer, but I think the understanding that the ways that people would have perceived a photographer even 5 years ago is pretty different from how it is now. The fact that you can be an influencer and make a very good living with taking photos just with your phone. There are people that drive around the state, that drive around the country, capturing images with their phone, and they're getting paid handsomely for it. So that exists. Like, that's a career. Is that a small percentage of people? Sure. But and does it also require a lot of pre-production time and a lot of production time and like post? Yes, of course it does. But it shouldn't take away from the fact that you're creating content, images, videos, audio, whatever it is, for a living. And I think that's really cool. That's probably been like the biggest change, and that's part of why I want to do all this shit. That's why I wanted to explore live streaming. Like, what is that like? What is that experience? How much of a pain in the ass is it? And it's a good pain in the ass, but now at least I have that understanding. So let me try it. And this goes back to Jay's question, like, how do you know what you want to do? You try it and then you go, no, that's a pain in the ass, I don't want to do it. I'll pay someone else to set up the stream, and I just want to be a part of it. I just want to be the person who's on camera. I just want to be the person who's having conversations.
There was something that triggered this thought of like, people see the end result. And like, when you were talking about how people can take their phones and that take photos with their phones, and that they probably have a lot more going on behind the scenes than the final image, that makes me think about how many times people want something just because it looks good, but they don't want to go through the changes that it takes to learn about something and go through the process. And I think a lot of people are like afraid and fearful of what these things can bring, even if it's something that they want.
That's a good point. That's a huge point. That's where, that's where most people stop, right, is the fear. If we go back to, right, that idea that I like to think positively of change, but even if it is, you want to pursue something that you love, right, that's a big change. And there's a fear of, well, what if? You could say what if forever. But yeah, if I watch someone's career, oh, I see all these things that they're doing. I could do that. But then it's, if you drop everything, that's scary. And then you do it, and then it doesn't immediately, you don't immediately explode. Like, that's sort of the other downside, right? Is that you see all these people doing this and you're like, I could do that. I could talk to my phone and I could sell people a product. Like, well, it's realizing that it takes time and effort to be comfortable on camera, and then it takes time and effort to build relationships with brands. And then, I mean, it becomes a job, right? I mean, it ultimately is a job. You have to have time management. You have to make sure that you can, figure out, what pricing you're going to have, and setting hours for yourself, like all of that stuff. It takes a lot to try and embrace that, and it isn't for everyone, even though seemingly it's easy, right?
From the outside, if you're not doing it, a lot of people can judge.
Oh yeah.
And going back to the idea of fear, that's how we met. Zach, go way back.
Yeah.
He messaged me. He's like, "Hey, Steve posted this job that they're looking for a food stylist," and I'm like, "No, I'm not."
Absolutely not.
He's like, "Like, you just gotta try. You just gotta go for it." I'm like, fine, okay. And then message you, and then you're like, we talked on, I remember it vividly, I was shopping at Trader Joe's, and then I was like, sitting in the parking lot thinking like, what am I doing? Like, am I an imposter? Like, this is imposter syndrome. And we were talking, and I'm like, I was honest, I was like, I totally don't feel qualified, but like, I'm willing to want to learn. And then, like, light bulbs lit up in your side, and you're like, oh, that's great. I'm like, is it? Are you sure? Because, like, don't you want somebody, like, experienced, or, like, this idea of somebody way more? Because I was afraid of even taking that step to try. But I was like, I just gotta
risk.
I won't know until I go for it. And that's the thing with every endeavor that anyone can take.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right, the expression, there's no reward without the risk, something like that. I'm simplifying it. My man Al, hold on, wait, my man Al's coming in dropping some knowledge. I love Al's thoughts. Oh, Al, that's a long comment. I don't know if I could read that whole thing. All right.
Should we read it out loud?
Yeah, Mo, I'm going to let you read it.
Okay. This doesn't address the business side of the conversation, but with regard to the fear and the self-judgment, there's a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action, and because there's only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly. To keep the channel open, you do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open, no artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction with whatever at any time. There is only a clear divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others. That's from Martha Graham. I think that's fantastic.
And Mo, I don't know if you've met Al.
I did.
You did. You have met Al. Oh wait, yeah, you did, because you came when I did the. Yeah, you met Al, of course. Al, thank you for that, because he literally is he's the most insightful person, and I love. When I listened to that, the big thing that I had to take, it was like, keep it yours, right? Keep it yours. Let it be yours. And it's so difficult. We live in such a time, right, where it's so difficult to block out what's happening. It's weird, right? Because if you block out what's happening, everything that's happening, artistically within the world, whatever it is, you're kind of closed off, and then you can be sort of safe and secure, and and you just don't have to think. You can just be in your own space. But then you could make this beautiful art, and then as soon as you share it with the world, it's now this vulnerability, right? That's your baby, and that's difficult to do. So I can't tell you how many projects that I have sitting on hard drives that I never shared, not because I was scared, but just because like I wanted it to be mine. Like I didn't need it to be anyone else's. I just wanted it to be mine. And it made me happy to do that. It doesn't need to be this promotion. It doesn't need to be this inspired piece or this series. It's like, no, I'm doing it for me because you enjoy it. So making it yours, keeping it yours, but then when you expose it to the world, right, you're immediately there's comparisons. And it's great. I love that people share their art because I see someone else's brain visually functioning and I go, oh, that's so cool. I can't believe they thought of that. And you just see things and you're like, ah, man, I'm so glad they shared that. So it's just such a weird thing to think about that. But then we are completely bombarded with so much stuff. And at the same time, sorry, I'm fully caffeinated at this point. When I think about things like TikTok, the idea that you can reach this crazy big audience, but then it's also, you're kind of, one of my thoughts on it is that you're encouraging the lack of creativity. You're encouraging a sort of follower's mindset. But then at the same time, the other thought is, well, maybe I'm encouraging someone to break out of their shell. Maybe I'm encouraging someone to say, you know what, put yourself on camera, be vulnerable, put yourself out there. You want to sing, you want to dance, be an entertainer. So doing that TikTok dance might have been a complete fear for someone, but if they see thousands of other people do it, they go, I can do it, let me do it. And it could bring them comfort and joy. So it's weird. I have mixed emotions on that.
I think that's okay.
I think it's okay too.
It's definitely okay. And I don't think a lot of people even allow themselves to have multiple perspectives on things because of how things have systemically been. I don't know.
I'm going back because I'm just reading two comments. So Esteban had a great comment, and then Latoya had an awesome comment following it up. So Esteban was saying, so if you just scroll up a little bit, this was, saying now it was 6 minutes ago, but the effect of social media and consuming everyone's highlights, right? It's your highlight reel. That's all you're seeing. No one ever sees the ups and downs or the process to getting that highlight reel. They don't see your 3 a.m., right, of you freaking out. They don't experience the anxiety that you have. They don't know, and they just see that final result of, oh, I wish I could do that. Or when they see that you bought this new camera system and they're like, oh, it must be nice to buy it. It's like, well, you know how much ass busting I had to do to buy that nice camera system? And I'm buying it for a specific reason. I'm not just buying it just because someone else has it, right? There's all of these things that kind of come into play, and it's always the what's the expression? The Johnsons. Is that the Johnsons? Where you're comparing yourself to your neighbors, constantly just doing that. And then Latoya's follow-up, right, is it's like comparing your level 1 to someone's level 10. And that's great because I used to suck. You used to suck. You had to suck to get to any level of being mediocre, and then to any level of being good, and then proficient. You have to suck. And it's so easy for people to forget that everyone once sucked. Jimi Hendrix at one point, it's hard to think, but like, he sucked at playing guitar. Like, he had to have, but he powered through it, he persevered, right? But it's that idea when you think of someone who is so amazing, and it's like, they used to suck. And you know what I do, Mo, when I think about that? This is another thing I've been thinking about lately, is that everyone used to be a 5-year-old kid at some, so I'm getting deep now. When I think about someone who is whomever, right? I think about like I don't know if you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, big entrepreneur, outspoken. He's very boisterous, like he's just all over the place, right? And I think about it, and he used to be a 5-year-old boy, and he played pretend. And there's something to me that's very disarming about that. When I think about these comparisons of other people, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I could ever achieve that level of whatever. And then I have an immediate thought of, Well, they used to be a 5-year-old child just like me. So like, why couldn't I? So if I'm comparing my level 1 to someone's level 10, it's like they used to be level 1. They used to be a 5-year-old kid, and they played in a sandbox. I used to play in a sandbox, so who's to say I can't now do what they're doing? I don't know. I maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it's difficult when you're always looking at someone else's highlight reel, like Esteban said.
Well, there's that quote: "Comparison is a thief of joy."
Ooh, comparison is a thief of joy. Well, I mean, there's so many good quotes around that. Like, what is it? Good artists borrow, great artists steal, something like that.
I was thinking about that this morning, actually.
And it's true, but it's also like it's kind of shitty, but at the same time, it's true.
Well, like, it's pretty shitty.
or people will sometimes say that it's the highest form of flattery when someone copies your stuff, and it's like, no, that's shitty, but also like that is kind of cool that yeah.
But if it happens to them,
different story.
Oh yeah, different, way different.
Ali has a question. Ask Monique if she has any advice for people who want to get into channeling their creative side. So Mo, what would you give, knowing that you've been creative in so many different facets, what advice would you give to someone who is trying to channel that, someone who's trying to harness that? You didn't know you had to give advice, did you?
No.
Well, here you go.
I think my advice would just be to really, like, I don't want to sound corny, but you have to really differentiate the voice within yourself. It's like a feeling of stillness, and you have to listen to something within you that is the opposite of fear. And then to access that, sometimes it takes disconnecting from everything. For me personally, sometimes I just need to go out into nature. And unplug. And it's like, I don't want to call it like a life calling, but it's really fine-tuning what makes you happy, what makes you feel purposeful.
I like the idea of connecting. I like the idea of connecting with nature because, I mean, you're just then kind of going back to just a more primitive mindset where you were removing your distractions. It's hard to think of like original ideas, right? And another quote is like, there are no original ideas, right? There's no original ideas. Like everything has been thought of until you see something and you go, oh, I never thought of that. So like, as you said, what can you, so I'm piggybacking. I hate piggybacking, but I'm going to piggyback on what you said, right? Like, can you, how refreshing does it feel? Right. So Ali, how refreshing does it feel to just disconnect and sort of cleanse from all of the stuff that's happening around you? So if you could do that for some extended period of time, and within that time allow yourself to be triggered to just the ideas that you have of, well, what if I wanted to explore crafts? So creativity, right, is so broad. Like, what would you do? There's art is such a huge freaking thing that you could do anything. So the things that make you most excited, regardless of anyone else is doing them, like, what are the things that you get excited about? What are the things that make you warm and fuzzy? And do those things. And don't do them for anyone else. Do them for you always first. Always do them for you first. And that's where like it needs to be. And sometimes if it is something you want to pursue professionally, then yeah, it has to kind of become a job to an extent. But do it for you first. And let that kind of fuel you. I hope that helps. Also, she said it was the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses, not the Johnsonses. So thank you for that.
With you just saying what you did, I take a lot of notes, and something that I thought of like just the other day, because I was just overwhelmed by the idea of comparison. Like, I was like, just trying to ground myself and calm down. And then I wrote down, I hope you make it a point to impress yourself more than you want to impress others.
That's good advice. Impress yourself first. Be impressed with what. And you want to know what? I'm going to take a moment. There are times when I do that. So I'm just going to pretend like you said that to me and not everyone else. The idea that sometimes, like, I'll go through and I'll have conversations with people, you know, if I'm talking to a client or I'm talking to anyone about my craft and the things that I do and the things that I enjoy, and then I'll say a whole bunch of things just naturally, and then I'll go, I know quite a few things about some things, and it makes me feel good to know that, like, this is what I love doing. And one of my favorite things is listening to people talk shop. I remember having this conversation with a buddy of mine, Mario, and he said it too. He's like, I love just listening to people talk shop because you hear people just sharing passion, right? It's not about like, oh, this is what I do for a living and, you know, it's a rough job and my boss is a dick and all these other things. It's like, no, even if people are talking about like sports stats, I don't care about sports, but when you hear people talk about it, as long as they're not being jerks about it, it's cool and it's interesting to be a part of those conversations or to just to overhear those conversations. And one of the things that I've tried to do is when I meet someone, I want to encourage everyone to do this when you meet people. Instead of saying, hey, how's it going? My name's Steve. Here's what I do. What's your name? What do you do? Change the conversation to say, what are you passionate about? That's a way more interesting conversation. And I will tell you, it's a difficult thing to do, to just come up to a stranger that you met at some networking thing and say, what are you passionate about? Because immediately a wall comes up and it's like, whoa, don't start talking to me about my passions. I don't even know you. It's like, yeah, but why wouldn't I? I'd rather have that conversation. And part of why I'm bringing that all up, right, is that my passion is the thing that makes me happy. And if it keeps me impressed and it keeps me fueled, I'm going to want to talk about it, hence why I'm doing this. You know, that's what this is. That to me is I would love to have more people approach things that way. I don't know. Al has another comment. I'm catching up now. Oh, Jay, you like that? The Johnsons? Yeah, keeping up with the Johnsons.
Oh, do you see Latoya's?
Hold on, I'm getting there. Where is she? Al said, the most anyone can ever do. They're coming. There's good feedback tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for that. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I was sitting there. I was telling Mo, I was like, Mo, it's just gonna be me and you. We're just gonna be hanging out. Like I don't expect, but thank you everyone for hanging out right now. It is greatly appreciated. So the most anyone can ever do is steal a particular product from your factory. You always own the factory. And if you're an artist, you've already moved beyond the product you put out yesterday, that they stole today. That's a good thing, right? When you think, Al, look at Al tying it back to change. And again, progress. Yeah, so you already did that. Yeah, I did that last week. I'm on to something else. I'm doing something else now because, and I will say this, is that I will do that. I will consume inspiration and then I'll go, ooh, I want to try this now. And I'll do it. And then I'll leave it alone. And it's literally one of those things, I don't know if you have this too, Mo, where you literally just need to make something to get it out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's most of my Instagram.
Ooh, I got this idea. Well, all of your bread making, right? During all of this quarantine.
Phase.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to bring it back because now people are like, why is she making bread again? I'm like,
Where's your bread? Where's all your bread, Mo? I need more bread.
Well, it's crazy because, like, okay, with Instagram, you can see the analytics, and, like, my top posts were of bread. I'm like, oh, man, this sucks. So I'm trying to get, like, you know, salads and whatnot.
You're like, oh, really, everyone? The bread? That's what did it? That photo of you, though, where you're, like, you're turned to the side and you're holding the loaf under your other arm, that's so good.
It's different. I mean, like,
yeah.
Going back to good artists, great artists steal. That quote, I want to elaborate. I want to bring up the question of, how do I word this? it, I think there's a difference when somebody is just trying to straight up copy for it to be exact because they see the result or attention that the person is getting versus somebody being inspired by something and wanting to understand why it moves them.
Yeah. Yep. I yeah. And I think that's I a lot of times I will look at what someone did. I love to reverse engineer. That's one of my favorite things to do. And as I was getting into photography and lighting specifically, reverse engineering. So I see the way something is lit and I go, ooh, I want to do that. I like that. I think that looks good. I want to know how to do that. So then I'll analyze the image, I'll break it down, and I'll try to recreate it. But then I'll try to apply it in a way that is me, right? So I'll figure out what they did.
Of like,
Yeah.
oh.
It should be right. It should be that evolution. Now, there are some things I'm sure, like with making bread, like there's only so much, leniency you have, I'm sure, in making a loaf of bread. Like it's a science, right? Baking is a science to an extent. To an extent.
I was thinking about that today, making a vegan, gluten-free, refined sugar-free loaf. And I'm like, man, this would be perfect to talk about for change because I switch up one tiny thing and it just sets it in a whole different direction. And that can be applied to life, of course.
Yes.
It's like one small difference can make the biggest change in outcome. And
that ripple effect.
yeah, like for better, for worse, hopefully for better, and that's a whole different scenario of like where your mindset is.
Of course. Yep.
um, shoot. Oh yeah, with bread. Bread's a science. It sucks. How many times I had to fail just to like get to a normal-ish loaf?
Yeah.
I think maybe that was another part of why it was engaging because I kept failing. I kept wanting to get back up because I was like, no, now this is pissing me off. I want to get decent at it.
Yes. Well, and you know what? I even see that. I see that perseverance and that determination that you have even in your styling because there's how many times have like we set something up and I go, oh Mo, that's good, that's great, leave it, click, and then you change it. You're like, no, hold on, wait, hold on, wait, and you'll want to you'll want to make it the best it can be instead of just going, yeah, you know what, I'm done. And I think that process of you sharing that, right? So it's again, you have to show the moments when you're down. I think it's important to, and there is something that people want to be. They want to. I think, as much as people want to see the finished product, as much as people want to see your level 10, right? There's something there's that human element, and Latoya was kind of talking about it when I was talking about passion, right? It's the vulnerability, because people realize they're human. Talking about that, and it's show me your level 1 and go, oh, yeah, Mo isn't perfect. Oh, crazy. She's not perfect at everything. Oh, all right. Well, then maybe maybe I'll make some bread. Or, there is something, you know what? I'm going to follow her because she's real. She's authentic, right? There is that buzzword that goes around so much. And I think that's where behind the scenes and sharing all of that is good.
Even that word authenticity has become a term that people are trying to like capitalize off of. And I think
know.
That's crazy. I don't know if that brings the conversation way in a different direction, but
I mean, and that's the cool thing about this is that there is this sort of topic of change, right? But change encompasses so much, and at the same time, I'm not gonna, deter us from having any conversation that's not only about change, right? And Jay just said, "Fall in love with your failures." I love that.
Yeah.
Fall in love with your failures.
How did you responding so quickly?
Oh, who, me?
You're on your computer and I'm like, I can't like pick this up.
Yeah, no. And that's a good thing, right? Is we talked about it, you have to suck. Everyone sucks. You have to suck. And failure is just another word for growth, right? Failure, like if or mistake, right? Or I'm sure there's some much more clever quote that would be way more inspiring to basically say that like you have to fail to progress. Like, you have to make mistakes.
You're
And
like my morning thoughts. How can we turn change into progress? How can we be more adaptable?
Mhm.
Other stuff.
Other things. But when you first came and did that shoot with me, right? You took a risk, right? And you had to be willing to fail. You have to. If you've never done something, right? Fake it till you make it is the term that everyone says. But it's, yeah, you know what? If you, I mean, obviously if someone's like, hey, Steve, we changed the brakes on my car, I'm going to go, no, I'm not going to, I have no interest in that. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to put you at risk. Like, no, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to fake it. No, stop it. I pay someone else to do that. But if it's something that you're kind of like, you know what? I could make bread. Let me try making this vegan, gluten, whatever free. Let me just try it. It might suck. It might be garbage, and it might be a waste of time and resource, or arguably those things. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's all worth it. I don't know.
I told myself it better be worth it. I'm going to make it worth it.
Well, it will, because it's a lesson, right? It's a life lesson, and there's, even if you learn one little thing from it, even if you take out one little part of the whole process, progress. It's worth it. You're kind of like, you know what? Oh. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that it's refreshing properly, because it does get frozen.
When you just said what you said, even going through all these quote-unquote failures, whether people realize it or not, I think they can learn something each and every time that they're not fully recognizing, but will showcase itself later down the road. Even if they don't automatically have the mindset of change can be a good thing, change is just a lesson, or failures. And I don't really know where I was going with that.
and that's absolutely fine, Mo. We don't have, like, not everything. And here's another thing too, right? Is, I'm just a person. You're just a person, right? I invited you to come do this with me. There's a vulnerability to this. Like, I sit and I want to share conversations. That's why I started doing a podcast a while ago. For those that are interested, yeah, I'm going to plug the podcast. YouTube.com/Steve Walter Photo. Also, because I'm going to, if for whatever reason, because I did have some people message me, so hold on, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I did have some people message me and saying that they would prefer to watch it on YouTube. I should have totally said this at the beginning, but I'm saying it at the end. Some people don't want to follow on Facebook, and I realize that it's a private group on Facebook, so if you want to be, if you don't want to be a part of that, go ahead and head over to my YouTube page, /Steve Walter Photo. But then on there, I also have a whole bunch of podcasts that I've recorded, and that's part of why I wanted to record that. And some people would argue, well, who are you to make a podcast? Like, you're not a host, you're not an entertainer, you're not a whatever label you want to address with someone or put on someone. And I say, well, I don't care. Like, I want to try it. I want to do it. I want to experience it and learn from it. And oh boy, did I learn from that process. I've learned from every time I've done a live stream. I've learned. I've tried something different almost every single time. And I want to do that. I want to make mistakes. I'm okay with making mistakes, because again, this isn't something that, like, I'm charging people for. It's something I do for free. But maybe the day will come where I decide, you know what, I do want to charge people. And I've made so many mistakes that now I know what mistakes not to make, so that I could then feel that I'm presenting and providing enough value so that someone doesn't go, what am I paying this guy $5 a month for? He's not even blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, I figured all those kinks out. So for me, it's like my own personal case study in developing my skills, and I'm okay with making those mistakes to get to a point where I can then feel, I can impress myself, right? To then say, you know what, here's this thing that I can do now. And that's okay. And I don't have to be a podcaster to say, I don't have to have any broadcast skills. It's like, give me a microphone, give me a thing, and I'll just do it. It might suck. It's gonna suck. But maybe it'll be okay too. I don't know.
I think so.
So I know we have just a couple minutes left, and I obviously want to be respectful of your time and everyone else's time. But I would say, yeah, I mean, we talked a lot. We kind of drifted a bunch, but then I think always making our way back. Like we said at the very beginning, like using a topic of just one word, change, and how heavy and broad that is. Yeah, it's so much, but I did want to just kind of dive into, part of our working and personal relationship over this past year. It's crazy to think that it's been like 1 year. I feel like
pretty painful for it all, to say the least.
Yeah.
It like, comparing, it's like, oh look, they have all their things figured out, but then it's like, how can we compare to ourselves and recognize our own journeys, and still like teaching myself like how much has happened from the first time that we worked together. It's like, what
a ton, a tremendous amount. It's crazy, but it's the biggest thing that I've had. One or two of the biggest words that I've had in my mind over the past, call it 6 months now, gratitude, or just grateful, and empathy. Like, those are the two that I've just kind of been switching back and forth in my mind constantly, in thinking about how grateful I am, but then also recognizing when empathy needs to be shared, or when it just needs to be experienced, when you need to take that step back and just process information. You need to just process things. And I adamantly try to see both sides of things whenever I can. And I always want to try to lean on the positive, because over the past, 10, 12 years now, like, focusing on positivity has gotten me to a place where I'm very happy. So for me, it seems like, well, that's what I need to continue to do, because that's what's been working for me. Because before then, I was not happy. So switching your mindset, right, I think can help you. And going back to, I think it was Allie who asked the question, like, how can you kind of tap into that creativity? For me, right, it's also considering positivity. So putting yourself in a positive mindset, that you will do something creative, in my opinion, will then return creativity to you. Now, again, I'm getting real deep and I don't know, maybe hippy dippy, as the kids say, but for me, that's like a firm belief. If you put out positive energy comes back. I know that that's like so broad, but I'm trying to just kind of connect and wrap my ideas together of, when I think about change, and if I think about it in a positive way, then it will be positive.
It's energy. What you put out will come back. And I think a lot of people don't realize how negative it can be. And I can speak from experience. Like, I know if I'm having a not so great day, then I have to pull myself out of that mindset. And because one thing can just roll into another, but it's up to us to decide if we want to make that momentum a positive one. Not to say that you have to be like super happy all the time. I think there's a misconception that happy people are like only bright and positive.
Only always happy, right? Yeah, high energy, all of that. No, I agree.
It's the pursuit of it. It takes wanting to choose it all the time and going for it. I don't know if that derailed too.
No, I was gonna say, on that note, Mo, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your story, sharing your progress, sharing your experiences, your change. And I want to thank everyone that chimed in, everyone that had questions. Again, apologies for the slow startup and some of those technical difficulties. I still have things that I need to learn. I still have mistakes. I made mistakes today, and I'm okay with that. So, Mo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until
Thank
next
you
time.
for all this.
And these should be because now that you're in the group, this video should exist for an extended period of time. Like I don't delete these, so if someone's watching this and you have comments, just tag Mo in it, and maybe she'll get back to you at some point, or I'll be like, hey Mo, you got to respond to this person. But yeah, Mo, thank you again.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody watching.